Hello, my name is Beth Bussey and I want to walk you through 42 years of Apple Inc. with innovations and creation of this company and its computer from beginning to present day. Apple Inc. as we know it had a rocky start. You may recognize the names Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Jobs and Wozniak met through a mutual friend and started a lifelong friendship and love of all things technology. Beginning together at on an Atari game project, and often frequenting the Homebrew Computer Club at California's Menlo Park in 1975. Wozniak built the first computer just by playing around and wanting to show off his capabilities. Jobs saw the potential in this computer, and the rest is history. However, I would like to take you through a small portion of that history. The name of Apple Inc. was Jobs' idea, and coincidentally the result of visiting an apple orchard. It was never meant to stick, somehow it did. Innocently enough, the name of their business would cause them 28 years of lawsuits and court dates. Preceding them with this name, it was owned by a rock group in the UK known as the Beatles, and it was called Apple Corps. 28 years later, in 2006, these lawsuits were settled on something that both companies could agree to. Incidentally, Apple Inc. is still the name of the company and going forward. Apple I was the brainchild of Steve Wozniak, and Steve Jobs, seeing the potential, was of course on board. Getting the necessary money to fund the project was another story altogether. The Apple I was created with no transformers, no case, no keyboard, or television. It wasn't possible for data to be funneled out of the computer without a cassette, a ROM chip, or typing in a code. Convincing an investor to take on the task of ordering these computers was a reach, to say the least. Paul Terrell, the owner of the Byte Shop in Mountain View, California, agreed to take 50 computers at $500 each to sell in his store. Terrell was a member of the Homebrew Computer Club, and he knew Jobs and Wozniak, but did not commit to the agreement until confirmation from the Kramer Electronics took place that the parts would be available to build these computers. Once the deal was agreed upon, family was then brought in to help solder parts of the kitchen table, and the first Apple computer was born. It was in production from April 76 to September 77, and around 200 units were built. Apple II appeared in 1977 at a West Coast computer fair. Memory ran to 64K at the top end, with image, NTSC play was in a high resolution category. The computer retailed for $1,300, but companies were apprehensive about whether or not to dig into their IT budgets for this item. Before moving on to Apple III, let's talk about the first app that was invented by Dan Brooklyn. It was known as VisiCalc, and it was the first app to be used by an Apple computer. This app was invented in '79 and described as a magic sheet of paper that could calculate and recalculate. Through trial and error, this Harvard University student invented the first Apple app and changed the course of history for computer use, establishing it as the cornerstone position within the business industry. The VisiCalc app led Apple II into being a fifth of all the sales of the series sold. The Apple was also first to provide usable color graphics. Lotus came on the scene with 123, and that is a spreadsheet program, and it became the standard to beat. This came about predominantly due to Lotus purchasing a company called Software Arts in '85, who is VisiCalc's developer. However, Microsoft established a new digital order. Through company purchasing, just like Lotus, Microsoft was able to remain on top through these deals of purchasing developers. Nearly 6 million Apple II series were produced in a 16-year period due to the innovation in their graphics. Incidentally, Microsoft's rival was Excel, and that's still what we use today. Both Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak went on to create Apple III, which blew through the 90s as the desktop to go to. Always looking to improve and innovate, Jobs approached Xerox. Through mutually beneficial negotiations, was able to secure a 3-day pass with access to their PARC technology, or printed technology. Jobs decided that in moving forward, every Apple computer should be similar to its workings. Inside competition between teams with Apple Corporation was common and truly allowed the development of this company to shine. One such competition assignment was between the creation of LISA, which is Local Integrated System Architecture, and the Macintosh. Each team placed their sights on first position to create an Apple computer with graphical interface. LISA proved to be too costly, and Macintosh went on to be the defining computer of Apple, leaving behind the Apple III. Jeff Raskin, an employee of Apple Inc., headed up the Macintosh inception and is duly credited for its beginning. However, Steve Jobs took over the Macintosh project in '81 and Steve left in '82. The machine that was eventually launched by Jobs, however, was quite different than the original. The Macintosh project phases start from simpler and smarter to good looks, and competition between the large technology companies was still fierce. Apple's first Mac commercial launched in 1984, pitting itself against the mammoth IBM. It was labeled a masterpiece in the advertising world and the top 50 of the greatest commercials list ever made. It was aired during the Super Bowl and seen by over 96 million people. Over the years, Apple has shown its innovation capabilities, not only in-house ingenuity, but on a larger scale simply by improving on someone else's technology. Apple's ability to improve and adapt is impressive. The mind of Steve Jobs and the people he surrounded himself with was key to the rise of Apple. Pulling away at record speeds from other competitors gave Apple the edge it needed to succeed. Anyone who has followed the history of Apple would no doubt know about the dissension between Jobs and Scully. John Scully was the president of Pepsi Company, and he is who Jobs pursued to be part of Apple. At first light, Scully and Jobs seemed to be a good fit until time and disagreements proved them wrong. Jobs was a rogue figure, unwilling to change course when he had his mind set towards a goal. There were insurmountable disagreements between these two powerhouses that eventually led to the demotion of Jobs, which left Scully running the show. Jobs eventually left Apple, taking a few key employees with him, and when he did, he created a company called Next. This company concentrated on building high-end workstations that were used in the education environment. 12 years, Jobs returned to Apple in '96. This was, of course, a benefit to Apple due to the current company Jobs founded that was called Next. Though Next was an asset, it still wasn't enough to take the company where the current board wanted it to go. Jobs was placed in an interim CEO position on a temporary basis, of course, and the restructuring began. Narrowing down the selection of products proved to be just what was needed, and even though the initial effect did not go as planned, eventually Apple products were holding their own in a time when other computer companies were stagnant or in decline. Although there are many opinions to be had by anyone who knows the story of why Jobs left Apple, what came out of it was higher profits for the company upon his return. With superior technology capabilities comes higher investment. To offset these higher investments, the profit margins need to be reflected in pricing. In the earlier years, to Jobs leaving the company, he was not willing to increase pricing for Macintosh. There were drawbacks and benefits to Jobs exiting and re-entering the company. Maybe with some maturing and years under his belt, he realized that business is much more than being creative. There were definitely low points and high points along the way. Some rebranding, some rebundling, and some with other softwares, alliances built, friendships lost. The Macintosh, pulling out in front as the premier computer system, has continued to evolve. Jobs' strategies often paid off and sometimes did not. Apple's computers operating systems are holding their own today. The competition continues to push the limits of what is known and adopting new creative concepts all the time. 42 years from April 1st, '76 to present-day Apple is still at the top of technology. Today, Tim Cook is the current CEO of Apple Inc., taking over August 2011, succeeding co-founder Steve Jobs, who passed away prematurely due to pancreatic cancer October 5th, 2011. His was a brilliant mind. My daughter-in-law, Beth Bussey, is a wedding photographer, professional photographer, and the owner of Brooke Nicole Photography. She expressed that she is loyal to Apple products since 2010 and refuses to utilize any other technology. She says it best, and I quote, I have been loyal to Apple since the beginning of my career in 2010 and wouldn't choose any other brand over it. Apple is a great tool for any career in design or major arts, and with photography, there's both. I use an Apple MacBook Pro and iPhone X for creative advertisement, editing, and retouching services, culling through thousands of raw files, and delivering products to clients. Apple has an intellectual programming system that lets me, as a photographer, quickly access and complete tasks all while connecting to each other. MacBook Pro, iPhone X, and Apple Watch. I use the Apple Watch during weddings as a method of communication and quick reference in posing. The watch also allows me to still be able to manage all of my apps while being discreet, without having to carry around and look at my phone. This speaks to Apple being a superior company to other computer companies, and hers is not the only testimony I've heard. Again, Jobs obviously saw the potential in this product and fought hard to see his vision come to pass. Many are thankful today that through grit and ingenuity of many involved, Apple is now far from what it used to be. Thank you.